Everyone, hope you're doing well. So today we're going to do a garden tour, and then also we have the seedlings set up outside. So I want to show you what we've got together for that. So first off, we're going to start with the raised beds. We'll just do a quick glaze over that and show how fast everything is growing because we went over the things that are in this so many times now. All right, so here's one of our broadleaf sage. Look how massive these leaves are getting. I think that's the biggest that I've seen the leaves get on these yet. And then echinacea turning into a shrub. And then here's another one that's even bigger. So I've only ever collected the flowers from these, but I think it's time to go ahead and try some of the other parts of the plant as well. And then mugwort, doubling every week it seems. I need to come through and go ahead and trim this back. It will grow up to be very, very tall very quickly. And here are carrots. I just wanted to show y'all, look. I've got a cluster of 3 here, so I'm just going to pull up one of these. So I was just digging around and I noticed that there was some orange down there. We've got a little baby carrot, probably like a couple of inches here, but the bugs have definitely gotten to it. That's all right. So I'm actually just going to try and shove this back into the ground and see if it'll keep growing and go to seed or if I just ruined it. So I just put that back and we'll pretend that that never happened and we'll see if the carrot feels the same way. And then over here at the greens, so the arugula here, almost all of it has gone to flower. And I'm just letting it go to flower. To stop it from going to flower, you can just chop them off and continue harvesting the leaves. But it's getting really hot, so it's at the point where it's going to bolt anyway. So I'm just letting those seeds drop, and then next year I'll have arugula come back here too, or even in the fall probably. Berries are really starting to come in strong. This is strawberries. And I'll have to look up the variety that these are. I ordered them on Etsy, but it's been so long I can't remember the exact type they were. And then the marigolds. Tons of these are getting their second sets of leaves. Dandelion. Now I don't mind the dandelions being in my bed, so I'll just go ahead and kind of spread these about. I'm actually not sure that any of those went in the bed. But the lemongrass is growing really fast. And then the lilac. It's getting really big really quick too. The lilac is also a first for me. I haven't grown it. And then we'll just take a look at this thyme here. So I cut it back a couple of weeks ago now, I think, and it's got tons of new growth. You can see the light green on the ends here. And aside from the lavender on both ends, I didn't get it on the other end, but we'll circle back. It is starting to really go crazy. And I'm happy to see like tons of growth points along the stems. I've only grown the lavender for a couple of years now, and last year was the first year that I actually got flowers from it. So I was able to collect the buds. So I'm not sure if it will put out a like new flower point from each of these, but if it does, that will be fantastic. We'll go check out the other one real quick. And here's the other lavender. I think that this is actually a couple of plants, but it looks so much better than the other one even. It's full all the way throughout. So this one does, I think, get a little bit more shade from the afternoon sun at least, because we have these big bushes here that block it and afternoon sun sets there.
We have less than 2 weeks until our last frost date, so it is time to begin acclimating the seedlings to full sunlight. So what that means is I'm going to be taking them outside for a few hours each day to get them used to full sun so that they don't burn up or that they're not too stressed whenever it comes time to transplant them into the garden, which we have finally planned out where we're going to officially put, by the way, but I'll talk about that later. If the weather's good enough and you don't want to take the seedlings back inside, you can also do things like give them a shade cloth if it's going to be really sunny, or if the weather is kind of questionable, you can even cover them in plastic, or I've done things like cover them in a mattress cover or sheets to protect them from cooler weather. You just want to be careful because things like peppers that enjoy hot weather can stunt if you leave them out in the cold weather consistently. So just be careful there. Now, as for the setup here, this is just an old well house that we've been trying to figure out how to reuse because it is now disconnected. So we just raised the roof and put some 4x4s up for supports. And then as for the shelving here, these are just some old warped fence panel boards. So I didn't need anything fancy. I just need something to sit these guys on so that they can get used to the sunlight. So we do have these kind of double stacked here to give them a little bit more support because they are kind of flimsy, but they work just fine.
So please excuse some of these seedlings. I ignored a couple of trays of these for a minute, so they might not make it. But here we have our tomatoes and okra. The okra is not doing so hot. Again, if you've seen before, this is my first year starting okra inside, so I'm thinking it's probably going to stunt it trying to do this and that I should just direct seed it. But I mean, I'm definitely going to direct seed more, so I'm not that concerned about it. And then the tomatoes, and it's also pretty cloudy right now. So whenever you're first transferring your seedlings outside, you don't want to sit them in the direct sun. It will burn up the leaves. And a lot of times they'll recuperate, but sometimes if you're messing with something like tomatoes, if the top leaves, say that it just kind of melted them and it wilted over just like this tomato plant is done because they grow from the top sets of the leaves. So don't ever top your tomatoes unless you don't want them to put out any more tomatoes. These are the pepper plants. I've got a few here. It looks like I've got one of at least most of these varieties. I don't think I've got any of the shishito that popped up. And then no serrano and no Anaheim. But I think I have one of each of the other. Oh, no cayenne. That's okay though. And what do we have here? So this is rutabaga and hollyhocks. It doesn't look like I have too many in here. I think that these are actually volunteer tomatoes. So this whole tray might be empty and it might be getting reseeded. So I'm not always too upset if I have to reseed something because it's just another opportunity to plant a different kind of seed. And then chamomile. I definitely need to plant more chamomile because it's definitely one of my favorite herbs that I use. And these two are also chamomile, but I had started these in a potting mix with a chunkier soil and also neglected them. So seeds are trapped underneath of here, I'm sure. So I just need to spread this out thinner and try and get them to germinate again. And maybe just re-sow some more chamomile here. And then really quick, we'll go over these. So this is self-heal, horehound, and I'll leave these in these containers and separate them whenever I go to transplant them. They'll be fine for another couple of weeks. Comfrey. So I think I have two plants that have germinated in here and then a volunteer tomato. And then this is mullein. So if all of this makes it, I will never need mullein again for sure. I know that. So this is a mix of herbs here. A lot of these have not germinated. It is the same type of deal with the chamomile. I used a potting mix and they were neglected. So they may or may not come up. If not, I've re-sown some of these. So we'll just worry about it later. And then back here I have some St. John's wort. So I think I have a couple of small plants that are popping up and that they're not just weeds. This is clover. I'll pull that out. But I think that these other might be the St. John's wort, I'm hoping, and then another volunteer tomato, which this one looks like it is a potato leaf variety, maybe. So usually I have just like a large cherry popping up, so we'll see if that one comes out the same. And lavender, and we've got 3 tomatoes in here. Normally I only have maybe like 10 tops lavender plants, and it looks like I've got half a tray here. I'll be able to start a little lavender hedge finally. And then yet another volunteer tomato. And then I know in this one I've got oregano and spearmint, chives, garlic chives. Uh, there's some valerian. It's a little sad looking. A lot of these are. Okay, and then over here is a little thing of celery. You can see all of the seedlings that have gotten very leggy, and I don't know if any of these are going to make it. It looks like there's some that are still germinating. So we might have some. I won't give up hope. And then a couple of more of those volunteer tomatoes. That would be these two. So that was the seedling setup. It's pretty simple, but it'll definitely get me through the next couple of weeks while I'm getting those guys acclimated to their new growing environment. Now we are over here at the berries. So we did a little bit of cleaning up today, and the area that these berries were in, that little flower bed is now being cleaned out. So we just moved these over here to this little bench that's leaning up against the fence. So I'll give you a little close up, and we're going to trim these berries, and I'm also going to talk about some tips for picking out berries, growing berries, just basically anything that I can throw at you for the berries. So real quick, we will just do a tour of the berries, and then we will talk about the tips. So back here we have a couple of pawpaw trees. I'm not sure if they're going to come back if they made it. We'll find out. And then, what is this? I think that this is just a house plant that got left out here. That is okay. And here we have a couple of Toro blueberries. I also organized these so we can figure out what we've got a lot easier now. Gotta weed them. So this one of the Toro blueberries has come back, but this one has not, at least not yet. I guess that we'll wait and see if that comes back as well. And also, I may end up propagating these this year. So they're pretty small. I don't really expect much growth from the blueberries this year. They may have another year or two on them before I can expect much of a harvest. And then here we have some Blue Jay blueberries. So this one is a indigo treat hascap berry. And I've never had hascap berries. So, I mean, I guess I don't know how I feel about planting berries before I've ever even tried them. But from what I read, they're supposed to be basically like an elongated blueberry in a sense. And then here we have another indigo treat hascap. And these two are growing very quickly, a lot faster than the blueberries. Sorry. So let's see. This one is an elderberry. I'm not sure of the variety on this one because the tag is missing, but I know that it's different than this variety. So I'm not sure that this one will come back. So we are still waiting. It may just be a later variety than this one, but this is another one that we will see. Here we are. John's elderberry. This one is coming in strong. And all of these berries, I think that technically it is going to be their second year because I bought these in the fall of last year as propagations. So a lot of these, they're really going to be taking off, especially the elderberry and the mulberry, from what I understand. So these are both dwarf ever-bearing mulberries. So they typically reach, I believe, 10 to 15 feet, but you can prune these back to stay shorter if you want. Lots of new growth coming in quick. And these four are the Heritage Red Raspberries. So you can see two of the four have began to come back. I'm sure the other two are right behind them because they're very vigorous growers. And if not, I'll be able to propagate these to make up for the loss. So that is a risk that I was willing to take when I purchased these berries in the fall and threw them out in the yard to do their best. And here I have two different varieties of blackberries. So these two are triple crown thornless blackberries. And it looks like they are just beginning to come back, or at least this one is. We're still waiting for this back one. And these two varieties are Chester thornless blackberries. So both of these are thornless varieties, but they're both different. And both of them are coming back. This one's beginning to, and that one got a very strong start, it seems. So I could probably go ahead and propagate this one right now if I wanted. Okay, so that is it for the names of the berries and what made it and what didn't. I'm very happy with the outcome of everything that has made it.
First off, I just want to talk about some of the questions that you may want to ask yourself whenever you're shopping for berries. So, you want to think about your space requirements. How much space do you have at your growing space, and how big are these berries going to get? Because you can have berries that grow on trees, bushes, you have cane varieties like blackberries and raspberries, and those actually spread through the root system. So you have to think about things like that. Is the plant going to be invasive, vigilant, or needy? Are you going to have to be constantly watching this plant to keep it alive? And is that something that you want to do if that is the case? So, whenever it comes to picking berries, know what zone you are living in and shop for berries that are going to be able to survive in that zone. You may be able to get away with like keeping some types in greenhouses to overwinter them and be able to keep them. Along with the growing habits and knowing if it's going to survive in your zone, you'll want to make sure that you have enough light in your yard because I believe pretty much all berries, they want full sunlight, all that they can take throughout the day. So if your yard has a lot of trees or it's very shady, you may want to consider clearing some of that out so that you can get some more sunlight in your yard. Or if you're interested, you could set up grow spaces inside of your house to possibly get dwarf varieties growing that way. Some other things that you may want to consider is how many years is it going to be until this plant is going to be producing fruit? Like for raspberries, blackberries, you're looking at a couple of years. For a lot of fruit trees, you're looking at like 10 to 15 years. You may get a few here and there before, but until it's really an adult and in full production. So just make sure that you're prepared for that amount of time. And then you also want to think about accessibility. So with the size that some of these are going to be getting, you'll either want to prune them back like very harshly to keep them to a manageable size. That or you'll want to have ladders or climbing gear or some kind of tool to be able to reach the fruit. The last question that I have for you that's going to also tie us over into our tips is, do you know how to process and store food? If not, it would be great for you to learn. It would be super helpful for you and give you a lot of different options in keeping the food that you're going to be growing. Now, some more tips that I have for you are to get multiple plants of the varieties that you're going to be getting. So, let me explain. Multiple plants or multiple varieties is even better. So, that will give you a better fruit production with the cross pollination. So you can do multiple plants of the same variety, and that's good. Multiple varieties is just a hair better. So the key here is that you really just want to have like different genetic material with your plants. So whether it be the same variety or a different variety, you just don't want a bunch of clones. And also propagate. So if you're going to do something like I am doing, I'm going to, especially with the blackberries and the mulberries and all of that, I got a few of them because I intended on propagating them. So if you don't want to propagate, you can get as many as you're going to grow, but I intend on basically making a food forest eventually. So you can get a few and then propagate and then just keep expanding every year. So you don't have to buy all of the berries that you're going to want at the same time. That can be very expensive. So if you're willing to take some time and propagate and be patient, it will serve you in the end. Now, another thing that you should do is to prune all of your fruit plants. So, this will really, really promote good growth. You may have seen some of the other garden tours with some of the woody perennials that I have with like the sage. If you trim it, it comes back nice and bushy. And if you don't, you've got a lot of sticks and the growth is kind of spotty. So, another tip is to pluck flowers when the plants are small. When they're at a really small stage and you know you've got like three, four flowers growing on the plant, that's only taking energy from the plant, and you should just take those off and let the energy go back into producing more leaves and branches. Don't forget to fertilize your plants. That's very important for the berry production is to have good fertile soil. Now, when it comes to the soil, you should check the pH of your soil. Or, I mean, you can, you don't necessarily have to. I probably won't, but a lot of berries kind of prefer a more acidic growing condition. So you can have amendments to make the soil more acidic. Now, another thing that you can do if it is a berry that prefers to grow in a wetter area, you can plant that in an area of your yard that floods. So, say you have like a little dip in your yard and sometimes the water gathers there, but then it drains out after the rain. That would be a good place to plant some of the berries that prefer a lot of water. And then the last tip that I have for you is to be sure and expect to have some for you and probably more for the wildlife, depending on your situation. So you can do things to help with this. You can get netting. I have tried like the very cheap like quarter-inch square netting that you can get for like $20 for like 100 foot. That stuff is absolute garbage and it's terrible for the environment and all of the animals. So I wouldn't waste your money on that. If you can try and get something that's a little more sustainable or better quality that's going to last a long time, I would definitely recommend that if you are truly wanting to protect your harvest.
So we were walking around the yard yesterday and we actually found what I believe is blackberries growing here already. So this year we did actually cut down a lot of the trees in the area just because that they were dead and we've got vines everywhere. It's a mess. So we were able to find that, and then I also found some just growing in our driveway, I'm pretty sure. So let me show you these things real quick. So in our driveway, I'm pretty sure that this is a blackberry. It looks like it has thorns, but as far as I do know, that there are no lookalikes for brambles like the berries. They all typically have this type of leaf shape with all of the indentions on the leaves. Some of the leaves can be more elongated and some of them can be more chunky. Maybe if you've seen back when we were comparing the blackberries and the raspberries. But anyway, definitely gonna just double check that, and I'm gonna come back and dig this up if that is the case. And now I'll go show you what we have on the other side of the yard. So here we are on the other side of the yard. It might be a little hard to see with all of the other growth here, but we're starting to get some flowers to form. And this is a thorned variety, it looks like, if it is indeed blackberries, which the leaves look like it. Okay, well, that's going to be it for today's garden tour. So I hope that viewing all of these perennial herbs and the berries and maybe talking about this are helping some of you guys kind of make choices when you're planning out your gardens for now and in the future. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great day. Bye!